Jane Eyre, Chapter 14, Part 2. You look very much puzzled, Miss Eyre, and though you are not pretty any more than I am handsome, yet a puzzled air becomes you. Besides, it is convenient, for it keeps those searching eyes of yours away from my physiognomy, and busies them with the worsted flowers of the rug. So puzzle on. Young lady, I am disposed to be gregarious and communicative tonight. With this announcement, he rose from his chair and stood leaning his arm on the marble mantelpiece. In that attitude, his shape was seen plainly as well as his face, his unusual breadth of chest disproportioned almost to the length of limb. I am sure most people would have thought him an ugly man, yet there was so much unconscious pride in his port, so much ease in his demeanor, such a look of complete indifference to his own external appearance, so haughty a reliance on the power of other qualities, intrinsic or advantageous, to atone for the lack of mere personal attractiveness, that, in looking at him, one inevitably shared the indifference and even in a blind and perfect sense put faith in the confidence. I am disposed to be gregarious and communicative tonight, he repeated, and that is why I sent for you. The fire and the chandelier were not sufficient company for me, nor would Pilate have been, for none of these can talk. Adele is a degree better, but still far below the mark. Mrs. Fairfax, ditto. You, I am persuaded, can suit me if you will. You puzzled me the first evening I invited you down here. I have almost forgotten you since. Other ideas have driven yours from my head. But tonight I am resolved to be at ease, to dismiss what importunes and recall what pleases. It would please me to now draw you out, to learn more of you. Therefore speak. Instead of speaking, I smiled, and not a very complacent or submissive smile either. Speak, he urged. What about, sir? Whatever you like. I leave both the choice of subject and the manner of treating it entirely to yourself. Accordingly, I sat and said nothing. If he expects me to talk for the mere sake of talking and showing off, he will find he has addressed himself to the wrong person, I thought. You are dumb, Miss Eyre. I was dumb still. He bent his head a little towards me, and with a single hasty glance seemed to dive into my nerves. Stubborn, he said, and annoyed. Ah, it is consistent. I put my request in an absurd, almost insolent form. Miss Eyre, I beg your pardon. The fact is, once for all, I don't wish to treat you like an inferior. That is, correcting himself, I claim only such superiority as must result from 20 years' difference in age and a century's advance in experience. This is legitimate, je tiens, as Adele would say, and it is by virtue of this superiority and this alone that I desire you to have the goodness to talk to me a little now, and divert my thoughts, which are galled with dwelling on one point, cankering as a rusty nail. He had deigned an explanation, almost an apology. I did not feel insensible to his condescension, and would not seem so. I am willing to amuse you if I can, sir, quite willing, but I cannot introduce a topic, because how do I know what will interest you? Ask me questions, and I will do my best to answer them. Then, in the first place, do you agree with me that I have a right to be a little masterful, abrupt, perhaps extracting sometimes on the grounds I stated, namely that I am old enough to be your father, and that I have battled through a varied experience with many men of many nations, and roamed over half the globe, while you have lived quietly with one set of people in the house? Do as you please, sir. That is no answer, or rather it is a very irritating one, because a very evasive one. Reply clearly. I don't think so. You have a right to command me merely because you are older than I, or because you have seen more of the world than I have. Your claim to superiority depends on the use you have made of your time and experience. Promptly spoken. But I won't allow that, seeing that it would never suit my case, as I have made an indifferent, not to say a bad, use of both advantages. Leaving superiority out of the question, then, you must still agree to receive my orders now and then without being piqued or hurt by the tone of command, will you? I smiled. I thought to myself, Mr. Rochester is peculiar. He seems to forget that he pays me £30 per annum for receiving his orders. The smile is very well, said he, catching instantly the passing expression. But speak too. I was thinking, sir, that very few masters would trouble themselves to inquire whether or not their paid subordinates were piqued and hurt by their orders. Paid subordinates? What? You are my paid subordinate, are you? Oh, yes, I had forgotten the salary. Well, then, on the mercenary ground, will you agree to let me hector a little? No, sir, not on that ground, but on the ground that you did forget it, and that you care whether or not a dependent is comfortable in his dependency. I agree heartily. And will you consent to dispense with a great many conventional forms and phrases without thinking that the omission arises from insolence? I am sure, sir, I should never mistake informality for insolence, for I rather like the other nothing freeborn would submit to, even for a salary. Humbug! Most things freeborn will submit to anything for a salary. Therefore, keep to yourself and don't venture on generalities of which you are intensely ignorant. However, I mentally shake hands with you for an answer, despite its inaccuracy, and as much for the manner in which it was said as for the substance of the speech. The manner was frank and sincere. One does not often see such a manner. No, on the contrary, affectation or coldness or stupid, coarse-minded misapprehension of one's meaning are the usual rewards of candor. Not 3,000 raw school-girl governesses would have answered me as you just have done, but I don't mean to flatter you. If you are cast in a different mold to the majority, it is no merit of yours. Nature did it. And then, after all, I go too fast in my conclusions, for what I yet know, you may be no better than the rest. You may have intolerable defects to counterbalance your few good points. And so may you, I thought. My eyes met his as the idea crossed my mind. He seemed to read the glance, answering as if its import had been spoken as well as imagined. Yes, you are right, said he. I have plenty of faults of my own, I know it, and I don't wish to palliate them, I assure you. God wot I need not be too severe about others. I have a past existence, a series of deeds, a color of life to contemplate within my own breast, which might well call my sneers and censures from the neighbors to myself. I started, or rather, for like other defaulters, I like to lay half the blame on ill fortune and adverse circumstances, was thrust on to a wrong tack at the age of 21, and have never recovered the right course since. But I have been very different. I might have been as good as you, wiser, almost as stainless. I envy you your peace of mind, your clean conscience, your unpolluted memory. Little girl, a memory without blot or contamination must be an exquisite treasure, and an inexhaustible source of pure refreshment, is it not? How has your memory been when you were 18, sir? All right, then, limpid, salubrious. No gush or bilge water had turned to fetid puddle. I was your equal at 18, quite your equal. Nature meant me to be, on the whole, a good man, Miss Eyre. One of the better end, and you see I am not so. You would say, don't you see it? At least I flatter myself I read as much in your eye, because, by the by, what you express with that organ I am quick to interpreting its language. Then take my word for it. I am not a villain. You are not to suppose that, not to attribute to me any such bad eminence, but owing, I verily believe, rather to circumstances than to my natural bent, I am a trite commonplace sinner, hackneyed in all the poor petty dissipations with which the rich and worthless try to put on life. Do you wonder that I avow this to you? Know that in the course of your future life, you will often find yourself elected the involuntary confidant of your acquaintances' secrets. People will instinctively find out, as I have done, that it is not your forte to tell of yourself, but to listen while others talk of themselves. They will feel, too, that you listen with no malevolent scorn of their indiscretion, but with a kind of innate sympathy, not the less comforting and encouraging because it is very unobtrusive in its manifestations.